Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sully Sports Hub. I've got Jon with me again for this draft season to talk through some of the top quarterbacks, and we're going to do it a little differently this year. In years past, we've really just done what's ended up being like a 2.5 hour mega podcast, trying to get through as many quarterbacks as we can, put them in order, all that stuff. We've decided we're going to spread it out a little more this year. We're going to talk about a lot of the top guys individually. We're actually going to break down a little bit of their tape as well. So there's going to be a video component to this, whether you're listening on Spotify or YouTube. Video components will be available on both of those. So that's going to be a lot of fun to talk through some of those clips. But overall, it'll give us a little more time to dive into some of these top guys at the top of the draft. And to start that, today we're going to talk about, I think, the one guy that most people view as a first-round pick in this year's draft, which is Cam Ward. But before we get into that, Jon, thanks for joining. I'm excited to break down Cam Ward today.
Yeah, thanks for having me again this year. You kind of mentioned, but it's draft season, so we're back again and excited to talk about some quarterbacks.
All right, so I think the way we're going to structure most of these conversations is talk about the player, who he is, what he's good at, what he's bad at, all of those ins and outs of the player's games, from the mental makeup, the decision-making, the actual physical ability they have as quarterbacks. Then we'll get into a few clips that kind of highlight or summarize a few key traits from those players, and then at the end we'll get into comps and where we actually think these guys should be drafted come the end of April. So Cam Ward is, like I said, the guy that I think most people view as the consensus number one quarterback in this draft, albeit a weak quarterback draft. Ward is the guy that I think most people view as having the potential to be a top 5 pick and actually live up to that billing. Ward is 6'2", he's a little over 220 pounds, so more prototypical in terms of size. He started off his collegiate career at Incarnate Word. He was very under-recruited coming out of high school. He was a 0-star player. Ended up playing at Incarnate Word. In high school, he was actually more of like a running quarterback, which is crazy to think about how far he's come now as a passer a few years down the road. But played at Washington State and then transferred to Miami after a lot of people thought he was going to enter the draft last year. Ended up having a really good season at Miami, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. They had a great offense in a season that was really only derailed by the defense. But let's jump into Ward as a player, kind of dive into that scouting report. So, Jon, if you had to kind of summarize Cam Ward as a quarterback, where would you start?
So I think that he is really difficult to capture because his play style varies so much. You watch him sometimes, and on some plays, his processing's really good. He's going through his progressions, and he gets the ball out quick. And then other times, he's dancing around, moving around, creating space, extending the play, and then trying to hit those big plays downfield. And it's really kind of jarring because he'll go back and forth between these during games. But I think as far as play style, if I had to describe like who he plays like, it kind of reminded me a couple of years ago when I was watching Bryce Young and then C.J. Stroud, because C.J. Stroud's the really efficient, he's staying on schedule. He's getting the ball out to where it needs to go on time. And then Bryce Young is moving around. He's creating plays. He's looking for these plays downfield, and a lot of times extending plays to do that. So it was kind of a blend of the two play styles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said there, I think, is going to summarize a lot of the conversation that we have about Ward, which is you see a lot of the different boxes that you typically look for at a quarterback being checked. So, like, at times, he really demonstrates elite arm talent, great arm strength. Like you said, the processing is there at times when he operates really efficiently from the pocket. But then he also has plays where he makes really exciting plays outside of the pocket. He creates opportunities when most quarterbacks would probably end up just taking a sack or throwing the ball away. But then there's the flip side of all those plays where he has a ton of fumbles compared to most guys. He makes questionable decisions at times that are not necessarily just misreading a play, but more so the over-aggressiveness is leading him to make mistakes. So he is a guy that I think is going to have to continue to figure out that balance of exactly the risks that he needs to take and the assumptions that he makes as a quarterback within the scheme that he operates in. So that's, I think, a good place to start for this conversation on Cam Ward is let's talk about the play style and the mentality, because honestly, I think this is the most unique part of his game compared to most other traits that he has. He plays just pretty much the most careless style that you can see from any quarterback. And careless is usually a negative word. I'm kind of using it just as a neutral term because there are times when his ability to play without a care in the world is more of a benefit than it is a drawback. But there's other times where you see that come back to bite him. There was a play against Cal where he literally, there's 12 men on the field. He turns as he's receiving the snap to point at the player that is trying to run off the field. That's the 12th man, before dropping back and just ripping a throw that's a dime, a great throw, right after somehow not even looking at the defense for half a second as he should be going through his progression. So you see, like, he just plays so loose, so collected, and sometimes it pays off. Other times that leads to mistakes. So, John, where else do you want to go in terms of his play style, in terms of his mentality?
Talking about that carefree attitude a little bit more. I know we've talked about a kind of a line. He occasionally will have plays where, if he's not getting pressured or if he's way back in the pocket, nobody's close to him, he just stands flat-footed. Like, he's gone through his progressions and now he's just standing there waiting on something to happen. And he plays really loose, like you said. At times, that will also lead to some really he can throw from a lot of arm angles, a lot of platforms, which increasingly is more important for newer quarterbacks as they're coming into the game. They need to be able to do that to manipulate different release angles, just depending on where the rush is coming from, and that's something that he can do very easily. It's something he demonstrated a lot. But I think that is where the game can really go south a little bit, is when he's too loose, when he's too careless. He'll see something and he'll lock in on it and say, I'm going there no matter what. There's a one-on-one with this guy that I trust a lot, doesn't matter, it's tight coverage, I'm throwing it up there, and he's letting it fly. And at times, that attitude really gets him into some bad situations where he's leaving something on the table. I forget game it was, but it might have been Georgia Tech. He took a shot downfield in tight man coverage, and there's a guy coming on a seam route, just right down the middle, wide open, and he completely missed it. He could have had a 20-yard gain, but he was going for the 50-yard gain. And I think that is where his game can sometimes be. It can be a positive, but if he does it too much and in the wrong situations, it's a negative.
Yeah, and I think this part of the discussion is where it's important to provide context on the type of offense that he was operating in, because I think it does inform a lot of what we can learn about Ward as a player, both good and bad. They clearly trusted him a ton in the offense. You see so many RPOs where the decision-making is completely left up to him to understand what type of defense he's seeing. A lot of times they'd take these quick little hitches and just pick up little 6-7 yard gains that are effectively their run plays, but allow Ward to still be involved in the game. Their offense was super talented. They had great receivers across the board. And that's, I think, where you see sometimes he almost trusts the offense too much, where he just assumes, like, yep, my guy's going to get, like, it's one-on-one. He's going to get open because he's gotten open every time before. And a lot of the times he's right. Somebody will make a play. But like you said, sometimes there's those intermediate throws where you would like to see him attempt that throw that's wide open compared to the play that still is going to require a great effort from his receiver. Sometimes those guys made those plays, but in the NFL, you're not going to be going up against garbage defensive backs. They're going to be just as talented as the guys on your side of the field, and probably where he's getting drafted, they're going to be better than the guys on his side of the field. So I think that is something he will continue to need to improve upon, because right now I was very surprised with how efficient their offense was, that I still felt like he was leaving plays on the field at times, which is ridiculous when you think about how good their offense was this year.
Yeah, and I will say, like, that offense was designed for him so well at Miami. It gave him a lot of flexibility. You kind of alluded to this or said this. It gave him a lot. He was changing the play a lot or changing protections a lot pre-snap, and that was something at Washington State they didn't do as much of, and I hated that offense that they had him running because they were just running bubble screens the whole time. And I liked that at Miami he had the ability to push the ball more, but sometimes that goes a little too far for him.
Yeah, and I think right now we're kind of hammering him for this. I will say, like, overall, I still think he has good processing skills. Yeah. Like, you see, I think the most impressive part of his game processing for me is the fact that he is able to very quickly diagnose what is in front of him. Mm-hmm. There are so many times where, he played a lot in shotgun. I don't even know if I saw him take an under center snap the whole year, to be honest. But he would be able to receive the snap and immediately, flip his hips, see what the defense is doing, fire a throw like in a tight window to let his receiver have plenty of open room to run and potentially set him up for a long gain after the catch. You see a lot of times where he finds those quick answers. He understands what's in front of him. I really think it's the times where the play doesn't go how he's expecting. That is when you see the most struggles for him. It's when, maybe they're in a different defense than I expected, or this guy's actually kind of holding up in man coverage against my receiver. Like, now I need to get to 2. I need to get to 3 in my progression. That, to me, is where you see him struggle the most. I think in terms of his ability to react quickly, that's a strength of his game. It's just those secondary reads where sometimes you wish he could get to those a little bit faster and see what is happening there. But like I said, I think he's very reactive. Like, when he sees something open, whether that's like on a broken play or just, that's a little bit outside of the structure of the design, he is very willing and eager to take that to make a play to continue to move his offense forward. Okay. Anything else that you would add on kind of the play style mentality part of his game?
You mentioned the anticipation. That's probably my favorite part of his game, even if he doesn't do it as much as I want him to. I think that he does that so when he does anticipate and he knows what's coming, he can tip the ball into windows as they're opening up before the defense really has a chance to react and cover that. But when it does break down and he does move out of the pocket, even if sometimes he doesn't necessarily need to do that, he is pretty accurate on the run. There are a lot of plays where he's moving and you think like he has no chance to get a good look at this pass, and the ball will actually get there, get to a receiver who's running across the field. And I think that if he's going to have this play style, at least he can do that. At least giving you a chance on some of those outside plays.
Yeah, I think later on in the process we'll talk about Shedeur Sanders, and that's a place where like sometimes I feel like he was trying to make those plays, but sometimes his physical ability or his limitations didn't allow him to do that. I think with Ward you see enough of those plays, especially one thing that stood out to me is he did not lose the touch that he has as a passer when he was outside of the pocket. Like, he really had the ability to still layer throws, make sure that he's not just, throwing the ball straight at a linebacker when he's rolling out of the pocket and throwing across his body. Overall, I think he's very talented there, and clearly, like, that's part of his mentality is he still understands, like, the structure of the defense even when he's on the move. I think another thing that we talked about his ability to diagnose. I really saw that against cover 3. I think specifically when he knew, where the holes in the defense were and where he could exploit, they did a really good job of setting him up for success with the plays they were running. But I thought overall, especially on those plays where he, if he sees an opening in the seam, he's going to get the ball out quick. He's going to make a good play in those results. It's really when he gets fooled that things start to get more difficult. I think the last thing I wanted to add about his mentality is just, and this is not, my information, but overall, the overwhelming sentiment seems to be that this guy's a really good leader. It seems like as soon as he got to Miami, guys gravitated towards him. It was immediately obvious who the leader of that team was, and you could see it on the field. I think that's really why I think he played in the bowl game for a half, is he wanted to play and give those other guys an opportunity to play alongside him one last time to, encourage everybody to stick it out and play in the bowl game. But Miami also wanted to get a look at their other quarterback to figure out, oh, we probably need to go pick up Carson Beck because this guy's not ready to play.
For a lot of money.
So that I think that was I think you can really tell that he meant a lot to the guys around him, and I think that is something like the leadership that you can bank on as a positive trait moving forward.
Yeah, their defense put them in horrible situations this year. Early out of the gates, they'd be down a couple scores, and it just never seemed like anybody was panicking. Cam Ward wasn't panicking, and it seems like the whole team kind of understands, like, this is a special guy. He's really talented. It doesn't matter if we're down early. We're going to score points. We have faith that we're going to still be in this game. At least that was my sense just from watching on tape.
Yeah, I agree. It seemed like 35-7 they're down, in some, I think against Cal maybe it was, they got down a ton and ended up coming back and winning. And really the only thing that changes is he's just a little more aggressive in the way that he plays. Like they still look like, they're fully confident in him and they trust him. And that, you talked about them getting down in games. Really the only time where you see that be Cam Ward's fault is when the turnovers and the risk taking gets a little out of hand. And I think that's a good place for us to jump to now. And because that kind of is a direct component of the way that he plays, his mentality. This to me is one of the bigger weaknesses in his game, but it is something where you kind of have to do the calculation of, like, what is the risk reward here? Like, he takes a ton of risks. We're going to talk about his turnovers, but you do also have to acknowledge the fact that he makes big plays a lot of the time when he's trying to play in this aggressive style. This is not just a guy that makes a ton of mistakes and doesn't get the requisite payoff for that, but it still needs to be talked about as more of a weakness in his game. I think there's times where he enters improv mode a little too early. You would just like to see him hang around in the pocket just another step longer. I think this is something maybe he can learn a little bit more as he gets to the NFL. When it worked out so well for him outside of the pocket in college, I just don't really think that there was much of a incentive for him to be like, oh, let me stick around in this pocket for a couple more seconds. Like, no, if he gets out, he's probably still going to make a really good play. But one of the biggest things for me here is I felt like a lot of his turnovers were like the most preventable turnovers you will ever see. It was not like, at least most of his turnovers were not like, oh, the defense outsmarted me. Like they schemed something up where I completely misread it. I thought like a safety was going to drop. He ended up coming down and making a play on the ball. No, it's like I was rolling to my right. I decided to jump and try to do a Derek Jeter throw halfway across the field with 3 defenders standing next to my receiver. Oh, and I guess it got intercepted. What a big surprise. Which honestly to me is probably a good thing, because I think those are easier to cut out of your game than like you're not seeing the field right. But that is definitely something he's going to have to rein in at the next level if he wants to start to be on the right side of that risk reward structure.
Yeah, and I was trying to think about like the best way to conceptualize this. I think he gets into heat check mode.
Yes, absolutely.
He starts feeling himself. He's like, I'm making some great throws. My guys are really talented. They're going to win. I'm going to start bombing every play. And I think that he does that sometimes when he feels pressed to score a lot of points really quickly. He's like, okay, we got to come back. And, you mentioned earlier, it can work out really well. He did have really talented receivers. He's putting it in spots to give them chances to win one-on-ones. But at times, forcing the ball, pushing it downfield, although it can be a real strength, it ended up leading to some bad results, or he's giving up easy plays that he could have had instead. And I think a lot of times, we talk about turnovers. I think we talked about also offline recently, some of the fumbles are definitely concerning. And a lot of times it's because of the way that he extends plays. He's moving around in the pocket. He's carrying the ball out in one hand, because he's like stiff-arming or just trying to create space. And a lot of times he ends up fumbling because of that. He needs to hold on to the ball better in the pocket. And there were times where, the offensive line is breaking down, and a lot of times he does actually manipulate the pocket pretty well. But there are a lot of times also where he's rolling into pressure or he's running out of a clean pocket. And, some of those areas of his game, I'd rather him stay in pocket longer, or if it is breaking down, at least hold on to the ball with two hands.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think another piece of what you just talked about was the I feel like there were a lot of times where he was seeing pressure and he knows he's about to get hit. He knows it's about to affect the throw, and he still tries to make a play. And those are the types of plays where you get bumped, you don't get as much on the throw as you expect. All of a sudden, you're throwing a ball 10 yards shorter than you thought, and a linebacker's got a chance to pick you off and have it heading the other way. Maybe there's a deflection. I actually thought there were more balls that had the opportunity to be batted down than I expected for a guy that's 6'2", which I think a lot of the times it's because he does like to drop the arm angles down. But there just, to me, are a lot of plays where things have a chance to go wrong. He's not always going to get penalized for them. Sometimes the ball is going to bounce your way. Sometimes it's not. But you just hope that he can continue to limit those as much as possible, because I think especially in the NFL, when the windows are tighter, when the margins are slimmer, that's just going to become a problem if it's not fixed at that level. So anything else you would add in terms of like the turnovers, the risk taking that we see with Cam Ward?
Not really. I think you mentioned this at the beginning, and I think it's a good way to cap a lot of that discussion. Is for him, being successful is going to be about balancing when to go into big play mode and when to not take those risks. If he can get that balance correct, I think that he has a really good chance of being a really successful quarterback.
Yeah, I think to me that is maybe like the most important thing a quarterback can do in terms of modern NFL guys and their processing. That was actually one of the reasons I really liked Caleb Williams last year, is I felt like you could see him processing and making those decisions in the way that he played, and understanding like when it was time to try to make a ridiculous play and when it was not. I think you see that in all the top guys right now. Mahomes, Allen. I mean, like Lamar, if you watch Lamar play this year, it is unfathomable that he would only throw 4 interceptions. Like the way that he plays, the aggressiveness that he plays with, the amount of times he's scrambling outside of the pocket and trying to make some play, it doesn't make sense that he's still able to limit the negatives this much. Josh Allen, I think, was the only player in the NFL this year to have a higher EPA on scrambles than he lost on sacks. So like when he was out and trying to make a play, like that, it is still a positive play for the offense because of how good he is at that risk reward stuff. To me, like that is Cam Ward's like swing skill. If he can nail that, if he can develop that, I could see him becoming a really good NFL quarterback. But it's not just as easy as like, flipping a switch. Even for guys like Allen, that took years in the NFL for him to finally find that perfect balance. So I'll be interested to see where that ends up with Ward. But I think to kind of mention a couple more things on the processing, on the turnover stuff, sometimes it's stuff that also just doesn't result in turnovers, but like you said, it's just passing up better opportunities. I think especially we'll see a couple clips where I think he just fails to check his work. He assumes that what he is anticipating the defense to do is what they're in, and he doesn't get off of it if he gets fooled. So that's something that I hope to see him develop more. I also think this got better as the year went on, but I would like to see him take the check down more often. Miami a lot of times would have kind of a guy sitting out in the flat waiting for an opportunity. I think there were some opportunities for Ward to take that he did not, but I did see more at the end of the year that he was starting to develop that more as a part of his game. So I think that's something he'll continue to improve on as he gets to the NFL.
I do have to mention about his checkdowns. He has some of the craziest checkdowns you'll see.
Yes.
He'll be rolling a direction and running backs trailing right at the line of scrimmage, and he will turn and fire cross body to the running back. And there are a lot of times where the angles he's throwing at, that's got to be picked off. And he's doing it like multiple times, 2 or 3 times a game. And I think that's something that it ended up working out really well for him, but he's going to have to watch that in the NFL because those angles get a lot tighter. The windows get a lot tighter in the NFL, and I think some of those plays could end up being easy interceptions for lurking linebackers or even defensive linemen who are trailing.
Yeah, I think we've termed this before the Madden angle interception, or like the not necessarily interception, but just the throw where in Madden, because you're in this camera that's behind everything, you can see the running back that's 90 degrees
Yeah.
to your left and just be like, oh yeah, I'll just throw that little swing route. Like the defense doesn't see it at all. But the quarterback doesn't see that at all in real life. But yet Ward, I do think a lot of times he just has a feel for where he expects his guys to be. And like you said, there's also just plays that are completely broken where he invents a check down. Like, oh, the running back was in pass pro and I'm starting to get sacked. Well, I'm just going to kind of shuffle the ball to him and then let him go get 10 yards. Or there was a play to one of their tight ends had like a 30-yard touchdown pass where he was literally just like standing around the pocket and Ward just pitches the ball to him and he goes and runs and scores as Ward is getting tackled and brought down to the ground. Those types of plays I actually do think are replicable in the NFL. Like those, it's not, I don't think that that's something that will completely go away from his game. Even if those plays will be more difficult, they'll probably be less often. I still think that he can translate that, because to me, that just shows the creativity that he plays with. He's looking for things that other guys just, when they're getting sacked, most quarterbacks aren't still just thinking like, oh, maybe I can find somebody to pitch this ball to. Like like Kirk Cousins is just trying not to like get killed as he's getting hit. So that to me is something like I kind of see that working, but there will be a play where it looks like the dumbest football play of all time, where he probably just throws it like straight at a defensive lineman when he does that. So yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of his game because I think it is pretty unique. So I'm very curious to see how that translates. Okay, let's now get into, really, I would just describe this as the passing overall. So let's get into the arm talent. Let's get into the accuracy, all that kind of stuff. Overall, I would describe this as a strength for Ward. I think you can say he has good arm talent. Overall, he has pretty solid accuracy. I think this is a guy that has a first-round arm. I think he belongs in that category. I think his biggest strengths are, like we said earlier, the different arm angles he has in the toolbox. I think those are effective. He understands when they need to be used, in what situations. I think he's able to translate that creativity and maintain it when he's still on the run, so he doesn't just lose that if he's not perfectly set or in a perfect position in the pocket. I would describe his arm as one that has zip, not necessarily a guy that just throws flat out bombs, but an arm that on 20 to 30 yard throws, he can throw it on a line and the ball looks like it's just not even moving as it travels across the field. But he's not a guy that, to me, he's not like a Josh Allen where you see some like just insane like bomb type of throw. So yeah, what do you think about his arm? Where do you think his strengths are, maybe some of his weaknesses in terms of his accuracy and his arm strength?
Yeah, I think you touched on pretty much everything. He has a good arm. It's not elite, it's not top tier, but it's plenty good. And I think this goes back to where when he's anticipating correctly, when he knows where his guy is going to be, he can really zip the ball into windows and give the defense no chance to get there. He also, he can definitely throw a deep ball. He threw plenty of them this year. And a lot of times he layer throws really well. So he's really good at getting the ball over linebackers on those intermediate routes. I think that, we've talked about when he can kind of go into heat check mode. I think that's where his accuracy can dip a little bit. When he's pushing, when he's trying to do too much, that's where some of the accuracy goes. Also, when the offensive line breaks on, I think you see him freak out a little bit, and not necessarily on a single down, but when it's happening consistently. I think it was when Washington State played Oregon last year. Oregon was just lighting them up, and it was constant pressure. And around like second quarter or so, it really started getting to him. And even when he's trying to hang in the pocket, he's getting pressured and pushed and flushed immediately. And he was inaccurate for a good chunk of that game because of the pressure. And I don't want to harp on that too much. That's going to be a problem even with the best quarterbacks. When they're getting pressured, they're not going to be able to set their feet and throw a good ball. They're not going to have time to let routes develop and hit them, where they need to go. But I do think that was that he tried to overcome with hero ball, and it didn't necessarily work out for him all the time. But overall, I would say that he is a talented passer and he has a lot of strengths as a thrower.
Yeah, you mentioned the Oregon game from last year. That is to me like if I could know anything with a larger sample size to see more clips of, I think that is what I would like to see and know better about Ward is when things are really bad, how does he play? Because I think at Washington State, you just saw the turnover numbers balloon. He's a more mature quarterback at Miami. I kind of wish we would have seen a few tougher matchups for him because like I remember watching the Florida State game who, I mean, they were horrendous this year.
Yeah.
They still had a talented defensive line. Miami ends up winning that game by a lot. But Ward really struggled in that game early, and they made him really uncomfortable. And I thought it was like the most scatterbrained that he looked the entire season. And it was in the game where I actually thought Miami's offensive line struggled. And it was, I mean, honestly, it might have been the only game all year where you really feel like the offensive line was worse than the team across from them because they had a really talented O-line. So that is a big question for me. I am not ready to make a declaration that if he has bad protection, he's going to fall apart. I mean, honestly, most quarterbacks, if they have bad protection, they're not going to be very good. But it is something that I struggle with because he's a guy that because he's so creative, I would think that even when the O-line is struggling, he's still going to make plays. And I wish I would have seen a little bit more of that in the Florida State game. But it's one game. You can't harp too much on it. So I agree with overall, this guy is very talented. He has great arm talent. I think he understands when he needs to use different types of throws. Like you see lasers, you see throws with more over the top. So I think he has a lot of that, a strong skill set. I think the last thing I would add in terms of his mechanics and in terms of his accuracy is going back to the idea of carelessness. I think there are times when his mechanics get careless. I think you see times where his hips are just never closed. Like it's not even like his hips open early to make a throw. They just never were closed. So of course the throw is going to be inaccurate. Like you're trying to throw 20 yards down the field and you're facing the receiver as you're letting go of the ball. Like, yeah, you're probably going to miss. And it's another thing that's hard to gauge because I don't think it's a complicated fix. I think that's one quarterback coach just kind of sitting down and being like, dude, like just tighten it up like 10% and you're good. But it is something that negatively impacted his performance at Miami. I thought it showed the most on throws where he missed behind guys, where because he, was not, closed off and then transferring his weight in the way that quarterbacks normally do, you just don't see the same level of accuracy. I thought he struggled the most on like comebacks and back shoulders, which may have something to do with the fact that, if he's missing behind those kind of throws where the ball really needs to be in that perfect spot on the receiver's hip, he's just not as accurate. Because I actually thought on most throws where he's like lasering in between two defenders, I thought he was super accurate on those. Like you almost never see him miss on those types of throws. So that's something I will be curious to see if it improves or not, because he definitely has some room for improvement in terms of just like the footwork, the mechanics, that kind of stuff. Even as somebody who doesn't know quarterback mechanics that well, as a baseball player, I can see like if your hips are square to your target as you're throwing the ball, you're not going to be in the best position to throw. No. So any other thoughts on the mechanics and the accuracy?
No, you perfectly. Sometimes he gets too careless, too carefree, and it kind of goes a little bit.
Yep. I feel like a lot of that conversation trended more negative. Honestly, I think that is because most of Ward's positive traits are just such a given that there's not really much question about them. I think the ambiguity comes in some of those struggles of, are those things that he's going to correct quickly, or is that going to take a lot of time for him to break some of those bad habits? I don't know how you can come away from watching his tape and not see the arm talent, see the ridiculous circus plays that he makes at times. And that's where his strengths lie as a player. So I think the last thing I want to talk about, you can feel free to add anything on. I want to spend just a little bit more time on the athleticism. I think we've talked about his ability to extend plays and make plays in that way, but I want to hone in on just how good of an athlete is Cam Ward really. And the best way I can summarize it is he's faster than the guy chasing him. He's never going to beat a guy like Lamar Jackson or just have breakaway speed. But you see when the pocket opens up, when there's a gap, he's quick enough to scoot out of there quickly, make a quick gain, and then get down and avoid contact. It kind of does remind me of the Mahomes thing where you just, he's scooting away from guys. He's just kind of playing the angles and making sure he doesn't take a big hit. And I do think he has good vision as a runner. Like I see where, he takes good angles. He's not putting himself in harm's way. So overall, I think he is not a guy with a ton of top speed, but for the speed that he has and for the athleticism he has, which is solid for a quarterback, I think he uses it pretty well.
Yeah, I kind of see the Mahomes thing, which I know that you hesitate to compare a guy to Mahomes, but in this specific thing, I think that it is a really similar style where he's just creating space for himself, getting away from the guy who's chasing him so that he can make a play, he can make a throw downfield or escape the pocket and get a few yards. A lot of times he ended up looking kind of goofy when he did it. I think the best way to put it is he just has good contact balance where he's stumbling away from a play, but he keeps his feet a lot of times and he's able to extend the play, push the ball downfield, or get out of the pocket. There were times where he kind of tripped because he stayed in the pocket too long or he ended up running himself into pressure, and then when he does try to get away, he kind of stumbles and falls. But that was kind of a minimal part. For the most part, he's very good at getting away from that pressure. And one of the things that I want to touch on with his scrambling, he does a great job of protecting himself. And this was my biggest critique of Jaden Daniels last year, was Jaden Daniels, every time he escaped, he's you're trying to get it out and put your body on the line for your team, but you're getting ragdolled around the field. Cam Ward didn't really do that. He slides a lot. He's running out of bounds a lot. Anytime he can protect himself, because he knows that protecting his health, especially long term, is really important. Anytime he could do that, he was, and I really value that in a player's game.
Yeah, especially Cam Ward is not a guy where we're sending him on design runs. We're using his legs in that fashion. There's some guys where Josh Allen's going to take some hits. Lamar Jackson is going to take some hits, although I think he does a better job of avoiding them than Allen does. Ward should really be able to stay out of harm's way with the style that he plays, and I agree. I think he does a really good job of that, and hopefully, that'll allow him to stay healthy at the next level, and continue to be able to maintain that playing style and that athleticism for a long period of time. So that part, I think there's some times where you can see times where I think he thinks he's going to get out of something and then he doesn't, and it leads to some really bad sacks. I still don't think they're as bad as some of the sacks Shedeur Sanders took. We'll get to some of those later, where he's just trying to make some ridiculous play, and it's you're not getting out of that one. But Ward has some of that. Yeah, Ward has some of that too, where he thinks he's going to make some ridiculous play, but sometimes he does. So you just kind of have to live with it. Okay, anything else before we get to a few clips here?
No, let's do it.
All right. So let's jump to a few clips. John, you can let me know when you can see my screen as well.
That's up.
All right. So we're going to talk through, I've kind of taken two games here. The first one is all from the Florida game, which I got my other hoodie on. This is going to be all the positive stuff. They destroyed Florida in this game. So you're going to see a lot of his best attributes, traits. Then we're going to go to the Virginia Tech game, which was more of a struggle for Ward. We're going to see some of the things that I think make him not necessarily one of those top prospects, as we can conclude later with our grade for Ward. So let's go ahead and start looking at the Florida tape. Florida here has got 4 down linemen. Really what you want to notice from this tape is Shamar James is out here. I think Pup Howard, this interior linebacker, was always responsible for the running back, and James is blitzing, and they're trying to disguise it. Ward's got, you've only got one corner over here. Safety's kind of rotating over the top. So Ward realizes, okay, he knows he's got one-on-one on this side. James is blitzing. Howard's trying to get out there and make a play. So he realizes at this point, oh, well, Cersei dropped from the left end to spy, I've got a ton of room. Like, I can just walk out of bounds, which he's the master of, just walking to places while somehow still being in a live play. But you see his reactivity here. So they send the running back out in motion. I think they kind of catch Florida in a look that they don't really want to end up in at this point, because I don't think you want Howard responsible for the running back if James is hanging out over here already. But they use motion to their advantage. They send James under pressure. Cersei drops to kind of handle the middle of the field, spy Ward. As soon as he sees this, as soon as he sees the pressure, glances over, oh, there's nobody there. I'm out. So the blitz doesn't affect him whatsoever. He gets out and makes a positive play. I think this is an example where it's nothing special. It's not like he makes some ridiculous play, but it's just an easy first down for the offense to keep the chains moving.
And I think this is one of the things he does so well, whether it is an intermediate pass or whether it's just, taking what's there. He recognized very quickly, like you said, where the defense was going to be. He knew the hole was going to be, and it was going to be an easy first down, and he just took it. And, these are the kind of plays that I would love to see him making more of.
Yep. So another example of the reactivity, the ability to process quickly here. Another example of him quickly reacting to the blitz. So I think this is Devin Moore up here. He's going to be blitzing off the short side of the field, trying to make a play on Ward before he has the chance to react. So you see him come off the edge. They're running a play fake there. Look, his head is already turned right at him. Well, he knows at this point, this safety, DJ Douglas, has to get out there to make that play. Okay, that's easy. I'm dropping the arm angle. Restrepo's going to break this route off at 6 yards or whatever distance he's at, and he's going to have plenty of room to make a play and get a first down. I think this type of play for Ward, again, it just shows he's very comfortable within the offense when he's able to diagnose what's happening quickly. He has the arm strength and the arm talent to make a quick play. So overall, I think this is a big strength of his game.
Yeah, and you mentioned drop the arm angle really quickly, able to just get it to guy. Another of his really strong talents that he has.
All right. The next two clips are really focused on his confidence and ability as a thrower. I think both of these can demonstrate how he recognizes the type of throw that needs to be made in his given situation, and he has the arm talent to make it happen. So this first clip, we've got 4 receivers out, 2x2. Florida's in a tight front here. They've got 3 down linemen, and you can see they're all within the width of the tackles. There's nobody playing out on the edge. This is called a tight front. Typically, if you're going to see teams run this, it's typically against spread offenses where you don't want to have a bunch of guys committed in the box. You want to be spread out enough, but you want to be able to defend the run with a lighter box. So keeping these defenders more on the interior allows you to defend the run better with a light box. So Florida's only got 5 players in the box here. And what this means for Ward here is, like, if they're passing the ball, Florida's most likely dropping 8, and they're going to have a ton of bodies devoted to coverage, which means the windows are going to be pretty tight. And you can see that here. So Florida drops back into a cover 3, and you can see all these bodies are in coverage. It's tight windows here. But what does Ward know? He knows, I've got this guy, and he's going to be carrying this corner up the field. This guy's got to take this receiver if he continues to go deep and outside. And he knows he's got Restrepo breaking off a corner route. And you see here, Restrepo is just breaking this route off. The DB's kind of just now got his head turned around to see what's happening. And the ball is already coming out of Ward's hand. He's already making this throw. So by the time the DB can get his head turned around and come close and make a play on the ball, we've got a catch, we've got a first down. That's, he knows exactly what he has there. He makes the throw on time, and he throws it with enough zip to get the ball there before Devin Moore can come down and make a play from his cover 3 drop. So I think that's just a really impressive throw against drop 8. He finds an answer quickly that's within the offense.
And I think that he really excelled against zone coverage, and to point probably cover 3 specifically. When he's facing man coverage, I think he tended to take some of the one-on-ones a lot more, but here he knows who is going to be in an open zone, when they're going to be breaking, and he throws it on time to the open area.
Yep. Here's the end zone angle for this play. So drifts a little bit to the left just to create that window, perfect throw, gets it there right before the defender is able to make a play. So yeah, overall, like very good rep from Ward. Here's one more rep. This one is also going to be cover 3 from Florida. This one, you're just going to see him react really well to pressure and get the ball out and still make a difficult throw. So Cam Jackson here on the interior breaks free. He's going to start making a play on Ward. At this point, you see cover 3, deep high safety. You know this guy's going to be open, but Ward's got to get this ball out, drops the arm angle before the defense can get to him, and makes a perfect throw over the linebacker's head, but shallow enough where the safety can't make a play on the ball. Just a really good throw. This is even a good throw without pressure, but especially with Cam Jackson bearing down on you, who's one of the largest interior defensive linemen in the country, and was a good player this year for Florida. This is not an easy throw whatsoever. He makes it flat-footed, and he makes it look really easy.
Yeah, showcasing the arm talent that we talked about earlier, and I think also going back to how he deals with pressure. If it's a single down here and there, he actually deals with it very well. It's not until you're really lighting him up and getting to him every play where he starts to break down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you can see there, like when he already thinks he has an answer, and then pressure comes, he's going to commit to the throw. He's going to get the ball out. He's going to still make the right decision. He's not just going to panic. It's more so when he starts to anticipate that pressure coming on a down-to-down basis, like you said, that's where sometimes things can get a little cloudy. But honestly, like, I think you see that with a ton of guys. I think you see all that with Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So, like, that's something that's really hard to avoid as a quarterback. All right, last play from the Florida game. I think this is, like, the Cam Ward play. Like, I really don't even think there's much I need to break down here. Let's just watch it. You're going to see him roll to the left. So he rolls to the left here. He buys time after they get quick interior pressure. And when you're watching this play right now at this point, you're thinking, okay, he's probably about to lob this over this shallow defender. This guy will catch it. Maybe he'll score. Maybe he'll get out of bounds. No, Cam Ward is thinking something different here. This guy back here, you can see his little hand is raised. He's saying, I'm open. And Ward patiently sets his feet, somehow lets go of this, like, completely run it. Like, he is running the opposite direction, throws completely across his body. But there's still a defender here. And he puts enough arc on the ball to get this over the defender's head, hits the receiver perfectly in stride on the run. This one, the end zone copy does it true justice, because you can really see how perfect the throw was. So Cersei wins inside. Ward rolls out. I mean, that's just perfect. Like, you cannot throw a ball any better than that. I remember watching that as a Florida fan, just questioning everything at that point, watching Ward play. So, I mean, yeah, just a great throw.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. That's all you need to see to see the undeniable talent and why he is going to be a really high pick in the draft.
Yeah. I remember I was all hyped up for this game, first game of the year. Somehow convinced myself Florida was going to win, and he came out and threw the early interception, and I was like, yes, this is still Washington State Cam Ward. Like, if we can just make him make 2 or 3 more mistakes, like, we have a chance here. And then the rest of the game was just flawless. Like, it was bad. So, yeah, that was a great game for him. Okay, now we're on to Virginia Tech. I think the biggest theme you're going to see from some of these plays is predetermined over-aggressiveness and an unwillingness to fully read the play out before making a decision. You saw earlier the anticipation worked out for him when he made that throw to Restrepo on the corner out against cover 3. Sometimes the over-anticipation comes back to bite him. So here, he gets trips. I think, from this pre-snap look, it's pretty obvious you've got man at this point, like probably some pressure coming, but maybe not. Maybe they're going to drop some guys. But he's going to try to read out this trips down at the bottom. Not a ton of pressure early. You can see here, clearly you've got man-to-man. But at this point, I think what Ward sees is he thinks that there was a miscommunication here. He thinks that both of these defenders went with 3, and Restrepo is going to be running wide open. But really what Virginia Tech has done is pass this off pretty well. This corner has dropped off to take 3. This corner has dropped off to take Restrepo. Ward does not check his work at all. You can see he's already throwing the ball, and he's leading Restrepo up the field, which I think is the way this route is designed. But because he's leading Restrepo up the field, he's leading him right into this corner. So, I mean, just hits him square in the chest and leaves him plenty of room to run. He actually makes a pretty good hit here and lays the guy out as he's going out of bounds. But those are the type of plays with Ward that you would just like to see cleaned up. He thinks he knows what's going to happen, so he doesn't check his work. He just pulls the trigger, leads to a really bad interception.
Yeah, he gets really aggressive, and it's one of the worst interceptions you're going to see from any of the draft eligible guys this year, right there.
All right, next clip. We got 3 more. So this one, again, we've got man coverage since the theme here. I mean, I've obviously cherry-picked some plays to make some points, but you can see in this game he did struggle against man at times. He's got one-on-one on the outside here. And this is an example of where sometimes you just wish that he would not immediately default to that being the answer. So in this case, this guy's running a little bit of a stutter go. I think Ward assumes that when he performs the stutter and ends up taking off, he's just going to beat him. He's going to be better than the corner that's guarding him. You can see he's already kind of gearing up to throw. But let's see. This pocket is clean. He's not being pressured. He can step up into this and have plenty of time to continue to make a throw. And let's watch Restrepo at the top of the screen. Just miles of separation as he breaks this route off towards the corner. And right now, this DB is still in perfect position. He's right in front of the receiver, exactly where you want to be. This throw ends up falling out of bounds, not even really a chance to make a play there. It looks like he's almost just getting rid of the ball on that throw. But you see Restrepo break up on the other side. If he just takes another beat there, checks the other side, you have a chance for a touchdown on that play.
Yeah, and this is where, like you said, he locked and he thought it was going to be there, and he forced it. He does this sometimes where he just assumes something's going to be there, and he's going to take it no matter what.
Yep. So this next play is very similar to what we just watched. He's going to take the one-on-one. This time, it is a guy that's on a wheel route. It's not the outside receiver. But you can see here. Let's stop. This is the perfect point to stop it. Where should this ball be going? Should it be going to the receiver who is 3 yards behind the guy that's covering him, or should it be going here? I think if he hits this guy in stride, it might be a touchdown. Like he may carry this straight up the field because this guy's running a hitch. But ball's already out. He actually, leads him a little too far inside. I think if he makes a perfect throw there, they still have a chance at a completion. But the easy answers are there, right? Sometimes it doesn't have to be as complicated as Ward makes it. I still, overall, like I said, I think I would say he is a good processor generally, but there's just plays like this that you hope he can clean up.
And there are times where he's passing up these wide open intermediate routes for taking the chance downfield, and those are the risks that I don't want him taking. Sometimes those risks, fine, but right here, it's wide open. I remember watching this one. I had to go back and rewatch it because I was like, I don't know how you don't see that wide open across the middle like that. Yep.
So this last one, this is going to be another pick. This is actually, I actually really like this as a counter example to the play that we saw against Florida, where he sees cover 3, he immediately makes the perfect throw on the corner route. On this play against Virginia Tech, Tech is sending pressure on this, which I think speeds him up a little bit, and I think that's probably what leads him to make a bad decision here. Is he's kind of getting sped up in the way that he's playing. I think he probably has a chance to buy time here, maybe even scramble. But they're running the same concept. This receiver is going to take the cover 3 corner upfield, and then we're hoping to get this corner route right in behind him. You can see Ward blindly throws this. He does not see if the corner carries the receiver upfield. He does not wait long enough to make sure this guy's open. And this corner gets his head around. I'm really not even sure if he is trying to, come down to Restrepo or if he just gets his head around and sees what's happening and reacts quickly enough to make a play. But you can see, the ball's out. Restrepo's head's not turned around. This guy's staring straight at the ball. Like, who do you think is going to make a better play on this ball? DB makes a play on the ball, gets tipped up in the air, and that's a pick. Just plays like that where you just wish, just take that extra beat. Just take that extra second, read it out. If it's not there, I still trust you to go make a play anyways. Ward is talented enough where he does not have to be a guy like Mac Jones or whoever you want to pick where if it's not in perfect timing, the play is not going to work out. Sometimes you just wish he would take that extra beat and confirm what he's seeing there on the field.
Yeah, I fully agree. And a lot of his strengths lead him into situations like this where he trusts himself or he trusts his teammates too much, and it gets him into bad situations.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that wraps up the tape. So now we're gonna get into comps, and we're gonna get into our final grade for Cam Ward. Let's start with comps, and then we'll finish with the grade. Comps are always interesting. They're never perfect. They just kind of inform you a little bit about what type of player am I looking at. I think that's really the most helpful thing is trying to conceptualize what does this look like in the NFL, which is I like typically kind of doing like best case, worst case for that reason to show like it's not necessarily that I think this player is going to be exactly like this guy, but that I see shades of him. So I'll let you start, John. Who is your comp for Cam Ward?
This one was really tough. I think Ward plays a very unique style, and it's hard to put a finger on exactly who he is like. I think he's not like anybody all that much, but he has a lot of different pieces from people's games. So if you want to talk best case, worst case, for best case, I don't think this is a perfect comp, and I saw this one from Trevor Sikkema, so I got to give him credit for it. But Big Ben, I think Ben Roethlisberger, the way he played, you do talk about a quarterback with a much stronger frame, a much bigger body. So a lot of times Ben is breaking tackles and then using the broken tackle as a way to create space for himself to then make a play and get the ball out. And Cam Ward is not that big frame, but he's able to make those plays, sometimes break tackles, sometimes just able to stumble away from the pressure coming at him to extend the play to then get the ball out. And I thought that was a really interesting comp that I think makes a lot of sense for the way he plays the game. Again, not perfect, but encapsulates a lot of his strengths as a player. I think on the other side, when you talk about a worst case comp, and if you're talking worst case, this guy actually had a really good year this year, so it could be a good indicator for Cam Ward. But I think that Sam Darnold was a guy who a lot of times can process things, can get through reads, can get the ball out quickly where it's supposed to go, and then sometimes for whatever reason he starts seeing ghosts on the field, and he starts freaking out. He's scrambling around, just throwing the ball around with reckless abandon, and that big shift between those two things are a big reason why the Vikings didn't make it further this year. They kind of collapsed at the end of the year because Darnold kind of reverted to that old style of play that he was he's been prone to. So I think that's where Cam Ward could have a successful career, but some of those negative tendencies could really hinder him. They have Darnold.
Yep. Yeah. I'll start with the Big Ben piece. I really like that comp. That's like I had not thought of that one before hearing that from you or like from Trevor Sikkema, but I do think the way that he plays in that, like, first my goal is to win from the pocket, but I have the talent to make plays outside of it, and if I have to run, I'll run. I think that's very similar to how Big Ben plays. If you kind of just like take Big Ben's career and say, what if he came up 15 years later? I think that's kind of the play style that you start to see, because Ward obviously plays a more free style than Big Ben played, but the context of the era in which he was playing, that just wasn't how guys played at the time, which I think is why it's so hard to make a comp for Ward. Is this type of quarterback, it's like the position of quarterback. There's like a pre-Mahomes era and a post-Mahomes era, and anything pre-Mahomes, this type of guy, I'm not even sure Cam Ward, like, I'm not sure people look at him as a first-round pick 10 years ago. I'm not sure that the freedom with which he plays and that style was really looked at as like, this is what an NFL quarterback does, until Mahomes came in and showed, no, like, this is the future. This, if you want to be an elite guy, this is how you have to play, which is why I think Ward is really interesting. The Darnold one, that was also my worst case. You hit it on the head there. I think you see, in the same way with Darnold, if you wanted to talk yourself into Darnold, you could say he checks every single box. I see every single thing that I want from a modern quarterback in his game. But the question is, how many of those are you confident he's really good at? Because with Darnold, some games it's all of them, and then some games it's none of them, right? So that's where I am with Ward. It's sometimes it looks really good, and then sometimes the reads aren't there, the processing is slow, all that kind of stuff. And so the hope that gives me with Ward is maybe the first couple years look really rough, but maybe he figures it out. Maybe because he has enough of those building blocks, he eventually can get there. But to me, what the Darnold comp informs is I think landing spot is really important for him, because I don't think this is a guy like Drake May where you throw him with a team with a trash offensive line with no receivers that anybody knows the names of, and he still goes out and you can immediately see this guy, this is a franchise quarterback. This is what it looks like. I don't know that Ward is going to deliver that type of play early on in his career unless the context around him is strong, which is not really an indictment on him. Like almost all quarterbacks, that is true. I think it just informs that maybe he's not one of these like top flight prospects that you typically see. Anything to add there before I give my best case comp that I already hate?
No, just some things that I'm going to come back to when we talk about grade.
Okay. So I'll give my best case. I'm going to caveat this probably 50 times throughout the statement. But if we are only talking about play style, who does this guy play the most like that is a really good quarterback? Which really for best case comp, that's what I'm trying to think about is if it works out, who does this guy look like? The answer is Patrick Mahomes. Now, I put my best case comp as Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl this year because I think Cam Ward's best is Patrick Mahomes' worst. Like the worst game Mahomes ever plays, that is probably what Cam Ward wishes he will be like at the next level. But in terms of the athletic traits, now Mahomes' arm strength is in a whole other category. I would not put Cam Ward's arm strength in there, not close to it all. But the play style where it's kind of a mix of processing plus making plays outside of the structure of the offense, the athleticism in terms of the mobility, the ability to create plays in that way, that is where I see the similarity being closest to Mahomes of any of the top quarterbacks. And if you think that it's like if you were on NCAA football and you turned the development sliders up to 200 for every single element of Cam Ward, that to me is the player that comes out in 5 years, is a guy that plays very similarly to Mahomes. I don't think he's that level of player. I don't think he's that level of prospect, but that's kind of what I see. All right. With that, let's jump to grades. I can start on this one since I feel like I throw to you every time, make you talk first. I'll give my opinion.
You're good.
And I'll explain. The way I typically think about my grades is I'll do either early round or late round for each one. So I'll say, last year for Bo Nix, I thought, okay, I had him as an early third round grade. Last year for Jaden Daniels, I had him as a late first round grade, which was probably an L, by the way. And then in the top of the draft, I will also mark guys with a star. Like I had Caleb Williams and Drake May last year as 1-1 with a star, which basically just means I think this guy is the savior for your franchise. If you get him, you are set for the next 10 years. I am very confident he will be good. I think they will be a superstar. With Cam Ward, I think I'm in that late first round range right now. I can see an argument for why you would take him top 5. Like we said, the boxes are there. I think there's so many things you can latch onto where if somebody took him top 5, I'm going to say, yep, I know exactly why you did that. I saw what you saw. I just don't know if I can get there in terms of my confidence that is what he ends up being as a player. I think there are too many ranges of outcomes that are realistic where it just doesn't all come together for whatever reason that is. Whether the turnovers can't get limited enough, whether he ends up taking too many sacks because he tries to make too many plays out of structure, whatever reason that is, there's just the mechanics, the accuracy. There's too many things that give me just slight hangups for me to get all the way there with saying this is a guy I would be willing to take in the top 5 of the draft. Now, could I see a world where he ends up becoming, a top 15, top 10 guy? I think it's out there. I'm just not confident enough to bet on it over taking like a Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter in this draft.
Yeah, so you said something earlier when you were talking about, I think about your worst case comp, where landing spot's going to be really important for him. I think that if I was a team with a really bad offensive line, or not an established, really strong offensive line, or at least serviceable level, I don't think I would want to take Cam Ward because I would be really worried about what that constant pressure would do to him and if that would push him too much towards his negative tendencies. Now, obviously, quarterback value is going to be inflated, so he's probably go top 5 anyway. He might go first overall, whether that's the Titans or a trade. But for me, I don't think I would want to take him unless I was one of those mid to late first round teams who, they have a little more of an established system already. They have something in place that he can come into and succeed in. He doesn't have to go out there and feel like he has to hero ball, because I think that's going to push him too much towards those negative tendencies that he has and not kind of accentuate what he does well. So as far as grades, I think he is that level of player. I think he's a guy that is very good at a lot of things. I don't think he's elite at anything necessarily. And with some of those hesitations that I have him in that late first round category. And I'd say that he's probably around that level that Jaden Daniels asked last year. Jaden Daniels, who I think does have at least one elite trait, probably a couple elite traits coming out, in at least his speed, if not his ability to throw downfield. Jaden Daniels, I had some hesitation with because of some of his for different reasons, but I think that's kind of how I'm feeling about Cam Ward. I like a lot of his game, but I'm hesitant about a couple of parts of his game that I don't know if I would want to take him and depend on him to come in this year and save my team.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think Ward to me is the guy that I have struggled the most with in like the few years I've been watching the quarterbacks where would I take him first? Like I think, 2 years ago with guys like Richardson, Stroud, Young, I ended up having all those guys as like, I think these are top 5 picks, but those, I struggled with some. Ward is like kind of the guy on the other side of that where it's like, man, I think he's really close. Like I can see an argument for it. I'm just not all the way there. I think what you said about the offensive line thing, it's like, most teams in the top 10 of the draft, they're there because their offensive line stinks. Like that's why they're picking there. The Titans, I guess the Browns might be the exception there. The Browns might actually have an okay offensive line, but the Titans, the Giants, the Patriots, the Jags, the Raiders, the Jets, we're
going to have to see what the Browns end up doing because of the Deshaun Watson situation. That offensive line might look very different. They may have some cap casualties there. Yeah. So the Browns might not even be a situation where he would be able to come in and be successful. Yep.
So overall, Cam Ward, really good prospect. Like I came away very impressed with him. I think he is I would be surprised if he is not a top 3 pick. I would be stunned if the Giants passed on him at 3. Like absolutely stunned. I think they may end up trading up to get him at 1, to be honest. But I would be very surprised if he makes out of the top 3. I think you can certainly make an argument for why he deserves to go there. I think I would rather take my shot somewhere else, but I also understand that if you're an owner and you've been terrible for the past 3 or 4 years and you're ready to just get the new guy in there and get started, I think he's got a lot of potential. So very fun prospect. I really like his play style, and I think he will be a fun quarterback in the NFL. Any final thoughts?
No, I think that pretty much captured it all. So.
All right. I'm not sure when the next one of these we will be recording will be, but we should be back at least sometime in the near future. We're hoping to. We've got a list of guys that we hope to cover. I may be on here solo sometimes, nerding out about some 5th round guy that I really like, but we'll see where it takes us. I think, John, we may have to. If we've got time, I think it would be interesting to go back and talk about some of the guys in previous years like Daniels and why we feel like what we think we missed on and how maybe we can learn from that. in future years, but
Yeah.
we'll have to see how much time we have, because we do have lives outside of this. So thanks everyone for watching. Jon, thanks again for joining. It was a lot of fun, and we'll catch y'all next time.
Yeah, thanks.